I am a Detective Constable Fiona Bowling, Family Liaison Officer to Richard's family, and I'm reading a statement on their behalf. To everyone else, he was Richard Dyson, but to his family and loved ones, he was a dad, a brother, a friend, an uncle, and a man with so much love to give. When Richard went missing, we were left without guidance, support and love, and those years without answers created a void that never could be filled. For 6 long years we have lived through a nightmare. Every day was marked by questions, pain and thoughts that brought constant torment. One of the cruelest parts of the ordeal was knowing someone out there held the truth while we as a family suffered in silence. When his remains were found, our world shattered all over again. After years of searching, the answer we feared most became reality. He was never coming home. The knowledge of what happened haunts us every single day. We cannot escape the thoughts of what he endured. The people responsible just didn't take his life, they destroyed an entire family. They stole years from us that we will never get back. The pain of losing Richard is unbearable, and the way he was taken makes the pain even harder to carry. This was not natural, it was not an accident, it was cruel and heartless, and we will carry that grief for the rest of our lives. No sentence will ever bring him back. No amount of punishment will undo the years of suffering, unanswered questions and the trauma that we have had to endure. We also want to take this opportunity to say thank you to the officers, detectives and everyone else who committed to getting justice for Richard. Thank you.
Yeah, the sentence today, 35 years for murder, handed down to 73-year-old Christopher Wright for the murder of Richard Dyson. For 6 years, Richard Dyson's body was undiscovered, concreted into a blue barrel, dismembered his body, and for 6 years his daughter Bethany desperately tried to find out what had happened to him. All the time, Christopher Wright and his accomplice Carl Schwalbe knew exactly what had happened to Richard Dyson. He'd shot him twice in the chest with what's believed to have been a shotgun over an argument over a stolen firearm. Now, Christopher Wright, obsessed with firearms, with weapons, a huge number of firearms, swords, knives, machine guns, shotguns, air rifles, 10,000 rounds of ammunition, all recovered from his farm by police. Richard Dyson had been living in 3 cars parked on the farmland of Christopher Wright, and it was back in 2019 when he disappeared. November 2019, he called his daughter Bethany for the last time. She said that it was very out of character for him not to call every day. She said in a victim witness statement today that he was more than just her father, he was her best friend. She said she spoke to him every day and she loved him very much. So she knew as soon as she couldn't get hold of him that something was wrong, and she said that the next 6 years of her life were an agony trying to find out what had happened to her father. The prosecution alleged that there was a row over a stolen firearm, that Richard Dyson had stolen a firearm from Christopher Wright and intended to sell it, or had sold it, because it was worth quite a lot of money. It was a vintage machine gun was the item in question. This sent Wright into a rage, according to the prosecution. He then shot Richard Dyson twice in the chest, and then for 3 days decided what to do with his body before dismembering it using a degree of skill, according to the prosecution, which was from his days in his youth, which he spent as a butcher. The body was then put into a barrel that was sealed with concrete, the barrel put onto a livestock trailer, which he then took to a neighbouring farm and said could he leave it there while he was tidying his own farm up. The date of that was recorded by the farmer that he left where he left the trailer in his diary, so police had that as evidence against Richard Wright. They also had some covert recordings. Despite numerous times that the pair were interviewed about the disappearance of Richard Dyson, they continually denied any knowledge, although some covert recordings did hear the pair discussing a vehicle which Carl Schwalbe had driven to the farm and which had been captured on CCTV, saying that's going to be the problem for us, and also a covert recording of Christopher Wright in a hotel room praying for absolution. The judge said that that was ironic given the fact that he was praying for absolution for what he'd done, yet he still refused to tell the police and the family of Richard Dyson what had happened. In sentencing, the judge said that Carl Schwalbe had made a statement post-trial, so after he'd been found guilty of perverting the course of justice, he said that in Carl Schwalbe's statement, he said, "Chris rang me to ask me for a coffee. I knew that that was strange. He's never made a call like that to me before, and he's never asked me for a coffee before." He said he turned up at the farm. He arrived in his 4x4 to see Wright standing over the body of Richard Dyson on the floor with a hole in his chest. He said, "Why is there no blood?" And Wright explained that because the shotgun blast will have cauterized any blood vessels, that was why there was no blood. But Schwalbe said he then took no further part in proceedings. He didn't help dismember the body. He didn't help put it into the barrel or put it onto the trailer, where it was then taken to the neighbouring farm 3 days later and left there for 6 years. When the police did eventually recover it, they used DNA techniques to identify that it was the body of Richard Dyson. A traumatic experience for Richard Dyson's daughter, for other family members. They had to sit through an 8-week trial, which they said was absolute torture, and which the judge acknowledged must have been horrific for them. He said it must have been traumatic to spend 8 weeks in court hearing the most appalling circumstances surrounding her father's death. He said that clearly there was no other option than a custodial sentence. It was a life sentence that he handed down, a minimum term ordinarily, or a starting point of 30 years for a life sentence involving a firearm. But aggravating factors such as the disposal of the body and the perversion of justice meant that that sentence was increased to 35 years. He served some time in prison, but it is likely, the judge said, or it's almost certain, the judge said, that he will never be released. His co-accused, Carl Schwalbe, was found guilty of conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. He is 73 years old as well. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison.